so that the guideline for the economy is not ownership. The guideline for the economy is need.
And it's a departure from a consumer economy.
The Economics of Compassion initiative is a robust effort to change the dynamics of a culture filled with inequality, especially economic inequality.
So the Economics of Compassion is a series of projects trying to affirm the abundance and that part of the local economy, all right, that is an antidote to scale, convenience. And so the least we can do is not shop in a store that's a big box.
ECI is based in Cincinnati and provokes new ways of thinking about poverty and economic health and provides resources that can have real impact in our neighborhoods.
Leading the predatory economy means walking into the wilderness. And the wilderness is a place of without visible, viable life supports.
With change, there is always risk. Yet we understand that new ways forward are required in these challenging times. One feature of the Economics of Compassion initiative is to join the growing chorus for a Jubilee year, based on the Bible's dictum that every 50th year should be a Jubilee year, with celebration and where all debts are forgiven.
I just had this image of the Red Sea in modern times. It is really red ink, all right? That's what we want to part. So a lot of our work with Jubilee is to how do we change our relationship to debt.
Join in this conversation. Join a wide range of citizens and communities learning to understand and impact the landscape of credit and debt in our neighborhoods.
It takes committed people to get things done.
Something about compassion, something about economics. I'm interested in both.
I have always had a lot of passion around issues of wealth and poverty.
I'm attracted to the concept.
I just want to see what's possible and who's interested.
All right, give yourself a hand.
So what the Exodus story in the Old Testament tells us is that Pharaoh's narrative of accumulation and monopoly has been interrupted. And when it was interrupted, it took some negotiation, it took some guerrilla warfare in the plagues, but then they left. They left Egypt, they departed the predatory economy, and what we're trying to think about is how do we together and how do we individually depart the predatory economy in ways that will put us more fully on the road to neighborliness. Leading the predatory economy means walking into the wilderness, and the wilderness is a place of without visible, viable life supports. Like everybody who leaves Pharaoh's world, they were terrified. And then you know how the story goes. What they discovered is that the wilderness that had no visible, viable life supports was indeed a place of abundance. It turned out that there was abundant bread, there was abundant water, and there was abundant quail. The lectionary reading this Sunday, one of the readings is from Numbers 11, where they ask for quail. And God gets so provoked with them, God says to them, these verses are left out, of course, but God says, you want quail? I'll give you quail for a day. I'll give you quail for a week. I'll give you quail for a month. I'll give you so much quail, I will stuff it up your nose. That's the word of the Lord, thanks be to God. So then they went to Sinai, and as you know, they got the commandments there. And I think that the commandments are rules and guidelines for how to administer the abundance. We know how to administer scarcity. You arrange a pyramid so the money all flows to the top. That's how you administer scarcity. But what we're trying to think about is how do you administer abundance? And I will mention 3 rules for the administration of abundance. The first one is keep Sabbath. Because there is an abundance of time. Only the predatory economy wants us to think that we don't have enough time. The second rule that Moses gave us is that at the end of every 7 years, you got to cancel debts on poor people because we have an abundance of neighbors in need. And the third rule of abundance is the Jubilee year, which every 49 years, people are given back what they lost in the rough and tumble because there are enough resources. So that's a great triad. Sabbath because there is enough time, debt cancellation because there are enough neighbors in need, and Jubilee because we have enough resources. If you trace the development of Torah interpretation from the book of Exodus to the book of Deuteronomy to the prophets, and then on into the rabbinic tradition in Judaism or on into the New Testament and the church fathers in Christianity, the critical reflection on the requirements of neighborliness have to keep being reformulated. And what I want to suggest to you is that we are an ongoing part of that continuing dynamic process of developing the codes and the protocols that will make neighborliness possible. And I am glad that there are as many of us here tonight as there are, but what I think is that there are very few of us here tonight. And the reason there are very few of us here tonight is that our society and our political economy are organized against neighborliness.
I like listening to Walter because he gives me a memory. Most of my life I've suffered from amnesia. And the older I get, the deeper the amnesia. And modernism, purpose is to erase memory. It's to, and so the last few hundred years has been to tear down tradition. Everything turns to gray. And so I appreciate the fact that what we're up to tonight has a history to it, has a tradition to it. And so our task is to not only remember that, but interpret it for today. And we do that together. And so that's what I want to do next. Walter often talks about the uncredentialed leader. And we believe in that despite the fact that we were given yellow ribbons to recreate in our setting our own little hierarchy. Okay? So those who organize this, those who get to speak, get credit with this. So I will treasure this and find out if it has any market value as soon as I go online tonight when I get home. Hopefully it does. The modern predatory quality is easily summarized by the notion of a culture of consumption, a culture of consumerism. So instead of making bricks out of straw and all of that, right now we're all engaged in the idea that whatever we have is not enough. So if there's a modern departure, it's a departure from consumption. And that is where the wilderness, to me, these tables, that all the people who are giving their lives to these activities, represent the modern wilderness. Every one of them does it for reasons other than wealth, other than profit, other than surplus. I know almost all of them. They do it at great sacrifice, and they're all short on money. And so you say, well, what's the modern wilderness? Well, it's an alternative economy that I don't have to create. Somebody's created it for me. And so what ECI, Economics of Compassion, really gets down to is us being full participants in an alternative economy, alternative relationship to money. with the idea that what we have is enough and our life is not organized around surplus. So what I would like to do is to give you some protocols that organize people towards this alternative economy or this hard road to neighborliness. And one of these protocols is whenever you break into small groups, first of all, you have to break into small groups. Otherwise, you'll spend your life as audience. And so long as you're sitting and I'm standing, as long as I have a microphone and you don't, you've lost your agency. Now, most of us know how to become good audience. We know how to make eye contact. We know how to act interested. We know how to lean forward to make. And so every time we gather, we have to disrupt. And luckily in the world, there's enormous disruption. You talk about the interruption of Pharaoh dying, of the plagues, where luckily there's no middle class left. Luckily, our students can't repay their loans. Luckily, we're headed for another recession within the next 3 months, because not only does Jubilee come every 7 years, but so do recessions. So 2008, 2015. And so all the things you see in the news, to me, are evidence of the interruption. That it used to be that you could make a decent living. You could get a job in the Rust Belt and have a life. Those jobs are gone. People say, bring the jobs back home. Well, they don't exist anymore. The city gives $500,000 to Celanese to build a $200 million. It's going to employ 14 people. So all this illusion of upward mobility, my children doing better than I did, all the notion that home ownership as a way, a path to wealth, it's gone. Not for everybody, not for those wearing yellow ribbons, all right, but for most of us. So that to me is the interruption. And so all these things we grew up with, the notion that if you get a college degree, you're set. Not exactly. A friend of mine just got a PhD, and he said, I'm still looking for work. And I said to Walter, that's because he got a PhD. All right? So the idea that the way to move up is through college, is schooling, is an illusion. Too many college, it's not an argument against college, but it's just an argument against the notion that if I have a college degree, somehow I'll do better. And half the people with college degrees now are serving us when we go out to eat. And so this is the disruption. And I think the Pope coming is a crying out. He evokes a longing, somebody that can talk about things in a simple, direct way that we kind of believe are true. And then what Walter and Economics of Compassion and your being here is to give form to the departure. And it's a departure from a consumer economy.
It says here, where do we go from here? And I don't care if you're in a church or a temple or a mosque or a union hall or a community meeting or a neighborhood community council. There's always that call for commitment that comes from that organization or that group of people, because it takes committed people to get things done. Now, we came here, Owen said, because we want to help. And I take that a little deeper than just wanting to help. We want to make a difference. Not only in the world, but we want to make a difference in our own lives. Because unless we can change our own lives, we're not changing the world. And so it really does start at an individual level. I am here because I want to change myself and I want to make a difference in my own life. And I do that by having meaningful interaction and community and meaningful economic exchange with people that I want to make a difference with.